Hello and welcome back to the Photographs Iceberg, a video series in which I explain each and every entry on this iceberg tier list meme thing. Now at last I have prepared, for your viewing pleasure, the long-awaited part 3, in which we will be covering tier 3 of this iceberg. And I promise you, it was worth the wait. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the iceberg video format, allow me to explain. I have this iceberg meme that I found on Reddit that lists famous photographs. Some of these photographs are very well known, others are historically impactful or significant, but all are notable in some way. As we get to lower and lower tiers, the entries get a little bit darker or a little bit more obscure. So tier 1 was all about the most famous photographs ever, whereas tier 3 is now getting into some impactful or historically relevant photographs that you may not have seen before. For each item named on this iceberg, I will give historical context, I'll explain why it's significant or particularly poignant, and when possible, I will give information about the photographer and how they took the photo. You don't need to watch these videos in order, by the way. You can start with tier 3 if this is the first one that you're seeing, but do go back and watch tiers 1 and 2 after because they're really good videos and I worked hard on them. One more note before we begin, and I know, I'm sorry, some of you hate long intros, you're gonna have to deal with it. In the last video, I had 3 entries that were labeled NSFL, and I saved those for the end of the video so that folks could click away if they weren't interested in hearing about them. Since the next few tiers have a higher percentage of entries that are labeled NSFW and NSFL, I have made an executive decision, and that is that instead of couching my language over the next few videos and trying to work around the YouTube censorship rules and trying to kind of downplay some of the things that I would otherwise say about these photos, I'm going to save all of the NSFW and NSFL shots for a separate video, which I will make at the end of this series. It will be a dark and disturbing addendum to this series with no sponsors or ads, so look forward to that. I do want to keep this video well balanced between fun and depressing, and with all of the NSFL entries, I think maybe it would lean more into the depressing aspect, so we'll save that for the end. With all of that said, and without further ado, let us jump right in and talk about tier 3. So, tier 3, entry number 1, is Moonrise, Hernandez, New Mexico. Ansel Adams is rearing his head very early on this list with this black and white photograph taken in November of 1941 from a vantage point just off the highway in, you guessed it, Hernandez, New Mexico. Now, Adams never provided a date for when this photo was taken, but we do know when it was taken because some nerds were able to determine the exact time and date based on the position of the stars. The image was captured at sunset and used an orange-yellow filter to create this intensely dark sky. Adams originally described the creation of this image very matter-of-factly, but in later descriptions he dramatized the event, stating that, "I could not find my Weston exposure meter. The situation was desperate. The low sun was trailing the edge of the clouds to the west. The shadow would soon dim out the white crosses. But thank God he managed to find the exposure meter and pull one exposure shortly before all light was lost, slipping under the horizon." Moving on. Valley of the Shadow of Death. This image was taken by Roger Fenton in 1855 during the Crimean War. The photographer was on assignment as an early photojournalist, this is back in 1855, right, by Agnew and Sons to capture the Crimean War, a war in which the UK, the French Empire, the Kingdom of Sardinia, and the Ottoman Empire were at war against the Russian Empire. The area captured in this image was nicknamed the Valley of Death because of the constant bombardment it received, as evidenced by the numerous Russian cannonballs strewn across the area. This image is known as the first iconic photograph of war, and it drew much public interest when it was exhibited in London in 1855, although it is part of a larger collection of 360 wet plate glass negatives taken by Fenton during this assignment. There is another version of this picture without the cannonballs on the road, and there's evidence to suggest that this picture was actually taken first, leading some people to believe that the more iconic version of the photo was actually staged a little bit. The cannonballs were placed onto the road for dramatic effect or something. But another explanation of this suggests that soldiers were up at the top of the hill and were gathering cannonballs to be reused. So they're throwing them down the hill and they're winding up on the road. I think that seems a little bit more likely. Just the distribution of the cannonballs seems really weird if you were just to place them there. It makes more sense to me to believe that they rolled. Next, we have the ultimate confrontation, the flower and the bayonet. This photograph was taken by French photographer Marc Ribaude in October of 1967. And it features American high school student Jan Rose Kasmer clutching a chrysanthemum and staring at a row of soldiers. Jan was among 100,000 other anti-war activists gathered to protest the American involvement in the Vietnam War. This image was published worldwide, and it became an icon of the flower power movement. Marc Ribot actually photographed Jan again in 2003, protesting against the Iraq War and carrying a poster of the original image. This second image of her just gets me right in the heart, you know? Like, in activist groups, you have all of these older folks who act as guideposts for the young. Like, they have time to organize, they're retired, they've spent lifetimes in the movement, they know all the history of the movement and the social politics of the different groups, just things that you can't Google, right? They're just such an important part of organizing. And like, it's fun to think of a youth movement as having all of these radical new ideas and energy, but really it's the retirees who are keeping that shit together, like filing financial disclosures and making sure nobody gets arrested. So to see this woman, Jan, go from being an idealistic youth to an impassioned veteran activist, I don't know, it's a great little time capsule of history. It feels like a complete moment. And the photographer did a great job on both shots. Like, he's obviously a great photographer. His other work is really cool too. Like, I didn't know about him before researching for this video, but he's got a lot of really fantastic and compelling photos in his portfolio. It can be really hard to make compositions when you're photographing groups of people or crowds, especially candid, and yet he manages to get really compelling shots, even in these somewhat chaotic environments. And obviously he's got a fantastic eye for composition because every single one of his photographs makes sense. And if you have a fantastic eye for composition, you know what else makes sense? Checking out the sponsor of today's video, PicDrop. PicDrop is a photo sharing platform created by photographers for photographers. It has a whole suite of tools designed to make it easy to share photos with your clients and collaborators. You can drag and drop photos to upload them to a gallery and then tailor the appearance of each gallery by customizing the header text and image, colors, and photo layout. If you struggle with keeping your photos organized and keeping your galleries in order, PicDrop has you covered. On your home screen, you have this nice tile view of each gallery to remind you what's in each one, and you also have an alphabetized list of all of your galleries that shows you the number of photos in each one. If you work with creative partners, I think you'll appreciate PicDrop's collaboration mode. Collaboration mode allows your creative partners to give feedback on their favorite images, rank images with colored flags, and like the images that they want to keep. This ensures that everyone is on the same page about which images are keepers and which are duds. And after spending years going back and forth with clients who will screenshot the photos that they want me to retouch and then send me the screenshots, then I have to pull up the screenshot here and then scroll through the gallery and open each thumbnail to find the exact photo that they're looking for, like, ugh. PicDrop has solved that for me. So if all of that sounds good and you want to check it out, you are in luck, because you can get 2 months of PicDrop for free by entering code YHansen at signup. I've got a link down below. Make it easy, go click that. Enter code YHansen at signup for 2 months free. And I want to give a big thank you to PicDrop for sponsoring today's video. Moving on, we have the elephant's foot. Man, I thought that this was going to be a cute photo of an elephant that maybe had something to do with the blind men proverb. It does not. It's actually a relic of the Chernobyl disaster. So this photo was taken in 1996 by Artur Korniev, 10 years after the disaster itself. This photo depicts a large mass of corium beneath reactor 4 at the Chernobyl power plant. Corium is a material created by nuclear meltdown. It is a mixture of nuclear fuel, fission products, control rods, and structural materials from parts of the reactor. And it's created when these lavified components react with air, water, steam, and molten concrete. We got uranium, cadmium, boric acid, aerosolized cesium iodide. I don't know much about chemistry, but I know I don't want to come in contact with any of those things. This mass, in fact, is one of the most radioactive objects in history and one of the most toxic substances on Earth. It was actually first photographed in 1986, shortly after the disaster, using a camera mounted on a wheeled trolley, because at the time it was way too dangerous for a person to approach. It kind of reminds me of the images from the Titanic from last year. Like, both show environments that once thrummed with human activity, but are now completely incompatible with life. This image is cool and creepy, but I think the more famous image by Korniev is a little bit cooler. Korniev was a nuclear inspector and deputy director of Shelter Object, and he set up a time-delayed exposure to capture this self-portrait of him near the mass of corium. The blurriness and fuzziness in this photo is due in part to the low light situation, but it's also a result of the level of radiation in the room. It was only 10 years later, so this was still a very, very radioactive object that he's standing right beside. Korniev returned to the site many, many times and cumulatively became one of the most irradiated people in history. Somehow, he's still alive, or at least he was in 2014 when he sat for an interview. I think he's fallen off the map a little bit since retirement, but I mean, he made it to retirement age, which is quite a feat for somebody who was on the Chernobyl cleanup crew. The next photo on our list is Rhein II. This photo is my least favorite photo. This photo was, at one point, the most expensive photograph ever sold. It was sold at auction in 2011 for $4.3 million. US dollars. It's even more in Canadian dollars. Granted, the print of it that sold was very large. It was taken in 1999 by German visual artist and photographer Andreas Gursky, and it features the lower Rhine River flowing through the frame. Gursky used digital editing techniques, which I guess were pretty new in 1999, in order to edit out extra details in the photo, including people, dog walkers, buildings in the background, in order to create this liminal, eerie landscape. A few months ago, when I originally sat down to write the script for this video, I got to this section about this photo, and it was so fascinating to me that this had sold for so much money that I made a reel about it. And in that reel, I basically expressed that I was baffled by the high price tag, and I kind of assumed that everybody would agree with me. They did not. And the comments on that reel were calling me stupid and saying that I don't appreciate art, and I can't possibly comprehend the artistic genius that went into producing a photo like this. I'm just jealous because I'll never make this kind of money off of my work because my work pales in comparison to this photo. And apparently, if I actually spent time studying art and photography, then I would understand that this photo is an absolute masterclass in line. I figured, okay, there must be something about this photo that I'm not seeing. Obviously, I'm not appreciating it to its full depth. And so I did a deep dive on this photo. I set it as the background image on my desktop. I set it as the background image on my phone. I went out and I spent 4 hours doing street photography, trying to capture images that evoked a similar sense of liminal nothingness. I studied the photographer. I looked at his other work. This photo haunted me for like almost a month. And you know what? After all that, after looking at this photo and thinking about this photo and contemplating this photo, I stand by my reel. I don't like this piece. I don't get why it sold for so much. Like, I get that it's art. It's got minimalism and the rule of thirds in it. Those are concepts that we learn in like photography 101. You don't need a fine art degree to clock them. But out of all of the beautiful photographs out there, even just the photographs on this tier, you are telling me that this one is worth the most money. Like, no, it's art world bullshit. It's money laundering. It's not even the best photo taken by this photographer, okay? He's got other work that is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal artist. He's very talented. He's made lots of beautiful photos. Look at these. These are beautiful. They're very cool. They've got the same eerie liminality to them. They could also be blown up into the size of murals and hung as like massive prints on some rich person's wall. It checks all the boxes. And yet, there is something going on in these photos. Just something, you know? And the lack of something going on is actually the true artistic genius in Rhein II. Okay, I bet you that the kind of person who's saying that is the kind of person who stands in front of a blank canvas in a museum with a notebook and a little beanie and goes, this one is actually my favorite piece. Just because I have a different perspective on this piece of art does not mean that I don't understand art. I do understand art quite well, I think, and I don't like this one. Rhein II, to me, looks like a scene in one of those Cold War dramas where people wear suits and like long trench coats, and they talk a lot, and nothing really happens except for the audience develops a vague aversion to socialized healthcare. It looks like a scene in like a British detective drama called Cold Men or something, where things happen. I don't know what happens because I've actually never watched one of those British detective dramas because they look really boring. Just like this photo, it looks like a scene in a Wes Anderson film where the main character is about to find out that his dad has died. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. This was actually... This was the second image taken by Andreas, hence the name Rhein II. So here is Rhein I, the first installment, and here is Rhein III, the third installment. I'm so sorry, I didn't need to talk about this one for so long. This photo has just been living rent-free in my head for months now, and I needed to get that out. Solvay Conference, 1927. This photo is known as the most intelligent photo ever taken. 17 of the 29 people featured in this photo won the Nobel Prize at some point. It was captured in 1927 by Benjamin Couprey, and he actually took a few photographs at this conference over the years, including this one, which was in my bedroom as a child, because look at how impactful Mary Curie looks in the middle, in this room full of men, taken at the conference in 1911. But the 1927 conference was really where it was at, because we have a stacked house here. Names you would recognize include Mary Curie, Albert Einstein, Erwin Schrödinger, Werner Heisenberg, Niels Bohr, and Max Planck, among many others. The primary topic of discussion at this conference was quantum theory, which at the time was very disturbing for the scientific paradigm. And thank God we have that totally resolved now, 100 years later. Sadly, I can't find much information about the photographer other than the fact that he photographed multiple Solvay conferences and he was from Belgium. Sorry, Kupri. Next up, we have Shell-Shocked Soldier, 1916. This one is like creepy as hell, man. It is said to depict the madness of war, and I see how it got that description. This image was taken during the Somme offensive in September of 1916, and it's actually a cropped-in version of a larger work taken by Canada's official war photographer, Ivor Castle. Its official title is actually Dressing Wounded in Trench During the Battle of Courcelette. The larger image features 8 soldiers in a trench, 4 medics dressing injuries on 4 wounded. And the grinning soldier is kind of off to the side in this composition. It's definitely not the focus. The photographer, Ivor Castle, took a few really memorable photographs during the war, including this image of soldiers going up over a trench and charging into battle, and this photo of Canadian soldiers marching along the Western Front. But his images strike me as like particularly propagandist and very straightforward, with many like dramatic group shots of soldiers in action. And I feel like the cropped version of this photo captures something more real about the horrors of war. Based on the rest of his portfolio, I wouldn't say that that was his intention in creating this image, right? Like, we have all of these triumphant battle scenes, and then this one lone piercing portrait, but only if you crop it in from a larger battle scene. I don't know. Next up, we have Hiroshima and Nagasaki Mushroom Cloud. Now, there are a few photos that this entry title could be referring to, but I think that this one is the most famous / reproduced. This photo was taken on the morning of August 8th, 1945, over Nagasaki, Japan, and it captures a mushroom cloud over the port city shortly after the second atomic bomb ever used in warfare was dropped by the Americans. This image was captured by 26-year-old Lieutenant Charles Levy with his personal camera while aboard an observation plane that flew near the plane that dropped the bomb. There had been a plan in place for a physicist with a high-speed camera to capture the explosion from a dedicated camera plane, but he had technical difficulties during takeoff that forced him to turn back. Levy, the photographer, was actually also affected by technical difficulties. Like, get it together, guys. This is a pretty big operation you're about to take part in. I don't see how so much stuff was going wrong at the last minute, but anyway. He was originally meant to be on the plane that dropped the bomb, but his crew switched planes after a complication. Without this complication, though, he may never have taken this famous photograph, which shows the unfathomable scale of destruction inflicted by nuclear weaponry. Next up, we have the Omagh bombing. In August of 1998, a car bombing took place in the town of Omagh in Northern Ireland. The bomb killed 29 people, including the photographer who took this photo, and injured 220 others. The bomb was placed inside the red car that's featured in this photo, and it exploded only a few minutes after the photo was taken. Some sources say it was seconds after the photo was taken, but I think that that is dramatized because the man and child featured survived the explosion. The bomb was planted by a splinter group of the Irish Republican Army, calling themselves the real Irish Republican Army, who opposed the ceasefire that had been signed by the IRA earlier that year. They later denied that the bomb was intended to kill civilians. They declared a ceasefire shortly after this event. Now, unfortunately, it seems that the photographer who took this photo is somewhat unknown. The camera was found in the debris, and I haven't seen much speculation online about who it could have belonged to, but I had a look through the list of people who lost their lives in this bombing, and I think the photographer could have been Rocio Ramos. The two people depicted in this photo were Spanish tourists, and Ramos was leading a group of Spanish tourists as part of a student exchange program. This was her 5th trip to Ireland, and she was helping to supervise Spanish children on a day trip to Omagh as part of their language course. As a group leader, I think it makes sense that she would be photographing other members of her group, and the only other Spanish victim of the bombing was 12 years old at the time. I'm not sure if he would have been super interested in taking tourist photos at that age. But either way, this is a really tragic loss of life with a really unsettling photograph left in its wake. Moving on from bombings and destruction for a second, we have another Ansel Adams shot. The Tetons and the Snake River. This is my favorite Ansel Adams shot so far, though. This one is so beautiful. It might be one of my favorite of his ever. This was taken in 1942, and it depicts the Teton mountain range and the Snake River, which you could probably have guessed by the title, in Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming. This photo was conceived as part of a mural project for the U.S. Department of the Interior, which was planned to celebrate the U.S. National Park System in a series of large-scale prints that would hang in the department's headquarters. Moonrise Hernandez, I think, was also slated to be part of this project. However, the American involvement in World War II that proceeded after the Pearl Harbor attacks cut funding for these large-scale artistic projects, as you can imagine. And the second half of Ansel's commission mission was cut short. In the fall of 1942, Ansel Adams sent 225 silver gelatin prints to the Department of the Interior in the hopes that seeing the prints would inspire the government to continue the project. Unfortunately, this was unsuccessful. Nonetheless, the images that he produced in this period while working on the mural project are some of the most incredible in his entire body of work. And indeed, they are some of the most beautiful photographs ever taken of these national parks. I see people trying to colorize this photo, and I think they're missing the point. like the color just makes it look like your standard HDR landscape photo, right? Like this would make a good desktop background, better than Rhein II. But the black and white has a tremendous weight to it. And Ansel shot in black and white with intention, right? Like he crafted the values in black and white. He considered each area of the shot in black and white. Colorizing it is like rewriting a famous novel in modern day English. It's not gonna improve the art. One more fun fact about this photo. By the time Ansel Adams took it, he was apparently no longer fit enough to scale rugged summits, which like, dude was only 40. They make him sound like an old man. But instead of climbing hillsides, he had a camera platform built onto the roof of his car to give him a high enough vantage point to capture photos like this. And oh my god, driving around national parks and standing on top of your car taking pictures is like my retirement plan. So kudos to Ansel for leading the way on this one. It sounds fantastic. Okay, less awesome. Next up, we've got Ronaldo Dagsa's last photo. This photo occupies the same unsettling space as the Omagh bombing photo. It's a normal scene seconds before disaster. So, taken by Filipino politician Ronaldo Dagsa on New Year's Day in 2011, this image features Dagsa's wife, daughter, and mother-in-law, and the man who shot him dead literally seconds after it was taken. It also shows another man who was working as the assassin's lookout. Dagsa's family immediately turned this photo over to the police, and they were able to identify the two men in the photo, leading to arrests just under a week later. Apparently, there were firecrackers going off when this photo was taken. I think due to it being New Year's Day, shortly after midnight, right? The family didn't hear the gunshots that killed Dagsa. They just saw him fall, and because of this, at the time, they didn't get a glimpse of the assassin. Without this photo, that assassin may never have been caught. The next photograph is raising the flag at Ground Zero. Now this photo was taken by Thomas E. Franklin on September 11th of 2001. It features 3 firemen raising an American flag at the site of the World Trade Center, shortly after the 9/11 attacks. The name of this photo references a photo that we covered in Tier 1, raising the flag at Iwo Jima. Now, that flag raising was staged, but this one seems to be more of an organic moment. One of the firefighters cut the flag from a yacht that was docked nearby and brought it to an evacuation area near the site. The firefighters found a flagpole sticking out from a pile of debris near the Marriott Hotel and raised the flag up on it together. Photographer Thomas Franklin was about 150 yards away from the scene and captured the photo with a telephoto lens. There are some other pretty compelling photographs of this scene, including a few by Laurie Grinkler and Ricky Flores. Laurie's shots have some really spectacular contrast in them, but unfortunately I think the vantage point is not as powerful as the photos shot from below. Okay, moving on, we have Elk Bath. This is probably the most beautiful photo of destruction ever taken. I'm willing to be proven wrong on that, but it's gotta be up there, right? Like, it's a beautiful shot, but ugh. This one was taken during the Montana fire in August of 2000 by fire service worker John McColgan, and it features 2 elk taking refuge in the Bitterroot River. This was taken with a Kodak DC-280 digital camera. Yeah, apparently Kodak did make digital cameras, and the photographer, John McColgan, is not actually like a photographer, he was just kind of in the right place at the right time. He's actually a fire behavior analyst, and he was in Montana to help control wildlife during the fire. He says that wildlife are keenly aware of where to wait out the fire, and many animals will gather on the riverbanks and in the water. He stood on a bridge to take this photo, and apparently there was a small deer right underneath the bridge nearby. This image was named one of Time magazine's Photographs of the Year in 2000. And that brings us to the final entry on tier number 3. We made okay time, I think, getting through this. That wasn't too long. I mean, it was like 2 hours of talking for me, but I think it's probably been about half an hour of listening for you. And the last photo I'm going to talk about today is the Solway Firth spaceman. This is such a fun photo, and it's got a really fun story. It's one of my favorite weird photos, but unfortunately it does have a very mundane explanation. But for this one, I am going to try and imitate the way that paranormal YouTubers talk, because they have like a very specific cadence, and I think it will be funny. So, this photo was taken in May of 1964 by Jim Templeton, who was photographing his 5-year-old daughter during a day trip to Burgh Marsh. He took 3 pictures of her in this position, and when the photos were developed, they revealed an unearthly visitor standing directly behind his daughter's head. Kodak Labs later examined the negatives and confirmed that the photograph was genuine. It bore no signs of having been tampered with. Templeton published the strange photograph in the local newspaper, and soon it was picked up by publications around the world. Shortly after his photograph was published and gaining this international attention, Templeton was visited by two men, claiming to be representatives of the US government. The men refused to identify themselves and were unable to show ID. Templeton led the men to the site where he had captured the strange image. But after telling the men that he had not seen the figure at the time the photograph was taken, they became angry and drove away. Okay, I'm done with the paranormal YouTuber voice. That was fun though, wasn't it? An actual explanation for this photograph was given by author David Clark, certified UFO guy, who says that the image likely captures Templeton's wife. She was present during the day trip and was wearing a pale blue dress that appears white when overexposed in photographs. She also had her hair cut into a short brown bob. So this is probably a picture of her from the back wandering into the frame. Apparently, the camera that Templeton was using only showed about 70% of the frame through the viewfinder. So it could be that he just didn't see his wife because the viewfinder cropped her out. I actually couldn't find what camera it was, but this is according to David Clark. So I'm gonna say that this one is sadly solved, but it is a really fun mystery story nonetheless. And that concludes tier number 3 of the photographs iceberg. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something new about history or about photography or about the history of photography. I have a few ideas for my next video, but I'm open to suggestions. If you have something you'd like to see me talk about, you can leave a comment down in the comment section below. I would love to hear about which photo on this tier was the most impactful for you, other than Rhein II. Have you seen any of these photos before? Let me know down in the comment section below. You can also subscribe to my channel if you want to keep in touch. You can hit that bell icon to get notified when I post. That would be sweet. You can check out my print shop. I do sell prints of my own photography. If you're curious about that, you can go and buy one if you like them. I'm such a good salesman. Okay, that's enough of that. I will see you all soon with a new video, and in the meantime, I want you all to stay sharp and don't forget to keep shooting. Bye, guys.